All right. Thank you all for coming today. My name is Jenny Paxson, and I am the Reader's Discovery Librarian here at the Webster Public Library. This is our Diverse Abilities Dialogues on hearing loss and the deaf community. And we have done many of these presentations already. This is our second year of doing them, well, chronologically, I guess. And what I do here at the library is that I help people find books, but I also have a passion for helping people who have developmental disabilities. Just because I have two children. My daughter has Down syndrome and autism, and my son has autism. So trying to find services in the community has been really challenging. And I just think this panel that we do really helps other people get services to and find those links in the community that are really necessary. And so I've been really lucky to be able to partner with Parents Helping Parents. And they are Parents Helping Parents Coalition of Monroe County. Sorry, I butchered your name there. You guys have been super amazing to partner with because they have a lot of resources and they're just the best people. So I've been super lucky to have friends like Parents Helping Parents. Because we've made a lot more than just connections, we are also friends now. So I think that's the best help you can get is from getting friends and being able to make those connections. So without further ado, I'm going to have Kim come up here and she's going to say a little bit about Parents Helping Parents.
Sure. Thank you, Jenny. Got a little sappy on us there. Thank you all for being here. This is one of my favorite months. I always learn so much from wonderful people like all of you. Parents Helping Parents, I'm Kim Dewar. I'm the Vice President of Parents Helping Parents. My other two colleagues, Brittany and Danielle, are sitting right there. We started as three moms who have kids with developmental disabilities and medical disabilities, and we knew that other families were drowning. And we established a coalition, and we do state level and local advocacy. We put on purposeful programming that is all free for kids who may be waiting for services, especially those in that 0 to 5 age group, early intervention and preschool special ed. Our programming includes this, Diverse Abilities Dialogues monthly, with collaborating with the Webster Public Library, of course. We do play dates every other month where volunteer providers from Step by Step come and help answer families' questions and just gives opportunities for families to connect with other parents. And then we also put on webinars. Our next webinar is actually this month, and it's a pretty important topic. Dr. Quo, the Chief of Developmental Pediatrics at Strong, and Lisa Latin is putting on a talk about autism. Let's talk about it. That's on March 21st from 8 to 9 p.m. So check Facebook for that Zoom link. It's always at night where people can just curl up on the couch and listen. A lot of folks are either waiting for a diagnosis of autism or just have some kids that have qualities of autism. And where do we go from there? What do we do when we're waiting for that type of autism diagnosis or lack thereof? So please join us for that. Thank you again for being here.
Okay, so the first question we like to ask our panel is, what you do for your organization, a little bit about yourself, and how you got started working in your organization. So let's start with Carrie here from the Rochester School for the Deaf.
Hi everyone, my name is Carrie Fisher Malley. Right now, currently, I'm the Director of Student Life at Rochester School for the Deaf, RSD. I am deaf. As you can see, I'm using sign language. It is my native language and my main language of communication. I do write and read English. I have literacy skills, but I use ASL. I am the Director of Student Life right now, as mentioned, and I have been for the past 7 years. So I'm in my 7th year, and I oversee the after-school programs, the athletic programs, the dorms, the residential program within the school for our students who are K-12 students and stay in the dorms, reside in the dorms. So I oversee that program there. I'm responsible for the staffing, ensuring that they're taking care of the students, that procedures and protocol are followed. And also I'm responsible for crisis intervention as well during the day. So I help respond to various situations or crises that happen, and I help with the teachers to regulate the students throughout the day and take care of those crises. Prior to that, I did teach for 9 years of high school math. So I was a previous educator, and that's really where my heart is and how this all started for me. But this position was available, and when it came to be, I applied, and I thought, well, I can't imagine. And then I did become the director in this admin role and have been there for 7 years. So I think there'll be some time to talk a little bit about my upbringing, my experience as a deaf person, and my journey, so I'm happy to talk a little bit more about that later, but as of right now, that's what I'm doing professionally. And I am a proud mother of 4 kids and cats. Hi, I will also be using sign language. My name is Karen Fisher Malley. I think I have the best job in the world personally. The reason being is I work at Rochester School for the Deaf in the Early Childhood Center, the ECC, which means every single day I get to see 18-month-old babes come in with big smiles on their faces, ready for school, so excited, and it makes me feel so good. I think this has got to be the best place in the world because they are so happy to come and so happy to come to school and learn. And I think back to my time in high school, I didn't want to get up, I didn't want to get on the bus and go, but young kids, they're younger than high school and they just love getting up and coming. It fills my heart. So that's my current position. I work with the babies when they're born all the way through kindergarten. My passion is also working with the families, and really that's the key in seeing our students thrive to success, is to ensure that families are collaborative and ready to learn with us. 90% of deaf children are born to hearing parents and hearing families, believe it or not. So often, when they're born, they are the first deaf person a parent meets, is their deaf child. So that has a huge impact on everyone's life. I've been in that position for 7 years. Prior to that, I also was a teacher, ages birth through 5, and provided home visits. I taught in the classroom. And so that experience guided me to where I am today. Becoming a mother also helped a lot in seeing how absolutely crucial the family bond and connection is. Am I voicing for everyone? Alrighty. Yep. Sorry. I will not tell you which language to pick. Well, is it RDN? Adrian? Austin, I'm sorry. I want to make sure I pronounced it right and I wasn't catching it. Thank you. Austin, my name is Austin Beard. I am hearing. I work as a audiologist over at our Rochester Hearing and Speech Center. I have worked there for 1.5 years. Before that, I did my internship. So sort of like a residency. I've worked with the deaf and hard of hearing community since I was 12. I am very passionate about working with individuals with disabilities. I am hearing, but I'm an individual with autism as well. So it's been really important for me that when I'm working with kids of all varieties of disabilities, and my expertise, as I mentioned, is auditory processing and testing auditory processing, getting hearing aids and devices fit for that, working with the deaf community, working with kids, especially with disabilities, as mentioned.
Hi, my name is Kristen Burkholz. I will not sign because my sign is really from birth to 5, and nobody wants to see my little sign. So, my name is Kristen Burkholz. I'm a speech pathologist. I have been a speech pathologist for over 20 years, and I started in the birth to 5 range during early intervention and preschool services. I have a specialization in working with children who are deaf or hard of hearing. I have worked in early intervention, preschool. I was the director of speech and language clinic services at Nazareth College, and I currently have a private practice working with kids, mainly birth to 5, doing speech, language, and listening skills. I have been on many teams with Karen and the staff from RSD. I work collaboratively with families and other providers based on what the parents are choosing as their main communication modality, and supporting what they want for their child and building those language skills. So I went to Nazareth. They started a program with a specialization in deafness, and I was like, yeah, I'm in. Like, so that's kind of how I started, and I've never stopped and haven't looked back. So that's kind of where I'm at.
So for a parent who, their child is born and they're deaf, or hard of hearing, like what do they, like, what services or resources do you think would be like your suggestions? Like, how do they, and also for the Rochester School for the Deaf, like, how does a child become a student there? Is it like, if they're born deaf, do they get automatic? Are they allowed? Like with other schools, like my child has Down syndrome, and there is no guarantee of school placement necessarily because there's so few placements available. So I know that's a struggle for the community in general. So I just was curious, what that looks like for you all. And, if you want to talk on your expertise, that would be great.
This is Karen. I can explain a little bit about RSD's side of it, at least, and our partnership with the community in general. Yeah, early intervention is all over across New York State, and it is oftentimes a challenge in terms of trying to find services for any student who needs it. Specifically with deaf and hard of hearing students, it can be, extra challenging as well, and there's not a huge group of students, but there is a big need. And there's, there's a small pool of qualified individuals being able to provide those services. So absolutely it can become challenging for families to locate the right resources. First off, thinking about, okay, my child's born deaf. We are already going through a different process to begin with. Wasn't maybe quite what they imagined their child to be. They weren't expecting that. And then now thinking about, okay, I've got this, and now I have to find services. And that's challenging for any family. So we are very lucky to live in Rochester. There's a huge deaf community here, and there is a lot of support services that can be found. So RSD is only available for, it's always, always available for families who have deaf children or a deaf child. And that is very rare because many programs are kind of capped out, they're maxed with how many they can have, but we work very hard to accept as many students as we possibly can and to try to provide and ensure quality services that match the need. It's also very important. Early intervention process is incredibly important in Monroe County to get involved as soon as possible, and we work very hard to partner with them and have a strong partnership with them and other counties in the area because we are funded differently. Which means if you come to RSD, you can still receive services through early intervention, which is wonderful for families because that doesn't always happen. So the more the better, right? And they're able to get that. So partnering with people like Kristen, for example, where we have many times, we've had the same students, that helps families receive services as many as possible. So again, we're very fortunate in the ways that we are able to support families and continue to accept students. And we also feel it's important to partner with early intervention through the counties to ensure that families are getting everything they possibly can receive. This is Carrie. I'd like to add as well from my experience and from what I have seen. Students get to RSD typically late. And it shows that they didn't receive the right information when they were born. So they went through a period of time until they realized, oh wow, there's not the level of language access that is needed. So then it might not be until middle school or high school that they come to RSD and their language delayed at that point, and there are other possible delays as well. And so early intervention is crucial in catching the need and for the doctor to provide all of the possible resources and information right there so that the families can then have a right to make the best educated decision that they can with all of the information they can. But oftentimes families don't know because the information is not passed along. And when families are, when families have babies, they want their babies to be like them, right? Hearing parents don't often want a deaf child because they don't know how to connect. They want a hearing child because they understand what that means. So those deaf children are often language deprived, and language deprivation impacts an individual for the entirety of their life. So education is crucial. It is important from the beginning until the end. And so Karen's program, they work very hard on educating individuals and families about that, because when they come to us later, it's quote unquote too late, which it's not too late. We will always take people. We will always do the best that we can, but to give them the best chance to thrive and have the best chance at those resources having a positive impact. Sooner the better. And, again, deaf youth, it's important to get them early to understand that there are impacts in deaf adults later from not getting what they needed as children. And so that connection, that continuity is incredibly important. The collaborations, the relationships to get them what they need all plays part of that.
When you say language deprived, when they come in middle school, high school, do you mean ASL? Do you mean voice, both?
Both. ASL really. They often don't have ASL. So usually if they're born, right, there's a hearing loss, profound deafness, whatever might be found. Access to language, where is it? They need a visual language, right? But if their parents and family don't sign, immediately from 0 to 5, there's no access to language. And if you have a CI or a hearing aid or a device, that's okay. But it's not 100% access. It's not a cure. It's a tool to enhance English and sound, but it's a tool purely. It really is not language. So communication and interaction and socialization through spoken language is missing, right? Because they need a visual language and then they don't have a visual language. And so myself, my parents tried hard, but I maybe caught 25% of the conversation because we didn't share language. And in a group setting, it was even less than 25, maybe 10% of the conversation with hearing aids, English, and no visual language. So the access just isn't there. That window of learning for neuroplasticity for your brain is 0 to 5. The older you get, it closes and it shrinks. It's harder to learn language the older you get. And so again, receiving that visual language and not having that taken away, so when it is taken away, we're deprived of it, but not missing out on that window of learning and acquisition for language is imperative. Because that time, again, it's crucial. It doesn't happen later in life. It happens very early in the brain developmental stages. So language and visual language and sign language is imperative. Really, any access to any language is important, but especially a visual language if that's what you need. Hopefully that answers the question. From my perspective as an audiologist, I also agree. I see a lot of families here in Rochester who use TC, total communication, the total communication approach. So for example, if a baby is identified as deaf or hard of hearing, then they come to me. We partner with EI, early intervention, to ensure that they have what they need and the services that they need. And, first I'm talking about hearing aids, but really we have to kind of back up and consider all of the things that are needed. Language, sign language, thinking about deaf mentors and role models. So my job, from my perspective, is to provide all of that information right up front. That way, again, they have all the information, they can make the best decision for their family. And in audiology, often that's not a thing. We tend to say, okay, get a CI, get some devices, we're going to speak and focus on that approach. And that's okay. But I think there's a lot of information that needs to be provided to parents and caregivers and families. So I'm working on a hearing test. I work on with hearing tests and also providing FM systems and devices, and again, those tools. If you want a cochlear implant, you can get one, of course. A person can receive one. And I also like to give information about RSD, sign language, free signing classes, apps that people can use, and really any way that they can acquire language or kind of get into the deaf world and have access to language. Because again, most people that have deaf children are hearing. So we partner a lot with early intervention, of course, as mentioned. Also schools. We often work with the educational audiologist. I'm a clinical audiologist, but we partner with them and work with the students or individuals often as well, kind of whatever they need.
I just want to jump in and talk about Jenny's question. I want to back up to getting that diagnosis, right? So oftentimes, I think there's a little bit of a missing link in Karen, and I have chatted about this a lot in the past, but as a parent, oftentimes these children aren't passing their newborn hearing screening at the hospital, and then they have to wait a couple of days, weeks to get a confirmed auditory brainstem response or an ABR done. So there's a lot of counseling piece that I sometimes feel is missing with that. We have families that don't ever come back, right? So we're sometimes picking those kids up in middle school or high school, or once they get to school age, or we do have families come and they get a confirmed diagnosis of any type of hearing loss, and oftentimes, and I know, having a child with different diagnoses too, you hear something and then sometimes you stop listening, right? You just hear like everyone's talking at you, getting all this information. So it's a breath of fresh air to hear that Austin gives a lot of information to families, because I feel like it's needed. And I think we need to keep doing it. Like, we need to keep talking about that. We need to keep talking about what language deprivation is, access to language, other types of communication modalities, like what that family can support over and over and across people, so that families have a chance to understand it, have a chance to make informed decisions for their family and their child. And when that's not working, we as professionals need to have that relationship with that family to talk about, this might not be the best path for us. Let's try a different one. And I always, families feel like they have to pick one thing and go with it, but I always feel like there's many options and paths to choose, and we can support families as they go down one, two. There's many families at RSD who choose ASL and also do spoken language, and it works for some of those families. So I think just being able to provide families with a lot of information so they can make informed decisions, and having the providers available to make that's the hard part, right? And like Karen mentioned, early intervention, we're at a loss for some of those specialized people. And I too often will say, like, contact RSD. That's like usually my first line of defense, because there isn't a lot available in early intervention right now. So there's no teacher of the deaf right now in early intervention. Audiology is key, but sometimes that medical home piece is really hard. So I think that giving parents lots of information, the more resources we can put together for families, will be really helpful for them to get all the things they need and make sure that they have all of the people too. And so I'm always happy to talk to any family and provide them with all of the resources and the things that I know, so they can get connected with RSD, they can get connected with a pediatric audiologist, and they can get connected with other families in the area, which I think is the biggest piece. Jenny, I don't know if that answered your question.
Do you find that pediatricians have a collaborative approach with the folks on this panel? Let's talk honestly.
I would say I make them a part of my team. So, right, I will call the audiologist, I'll call the pediatrician, I'll call all the other providers. So I think it's pediatricians have a lot on their plate. They have to know a lot about a lot of things, and I think sometimes knowing about having significant expertise in hearing loss, and I think there are some pediatricians in the area who definitely do, or specific information about autism or Down syndrome, right? Like, there's definitely pediatricians that specialize in different things, but I think making them part of our team is important, so that we can create that kind of medical home piece, so that they can support the families in what kind of we're all doing. So that's kind of. Sorry.
This is Karen. I think the Rochester audiology community has improved a lot recently, in the recent years, especially communication with family. I don't believe that's true for maybe some of the other areas, surrounding areas that have as big of a deaf community or population, but we can get referrals from audiologists in the hospital. I've never had that happen until like the last 5 years. Within the last 5 years. So that's been a huge impact where families, are saying like, oh, I learned, from my audiologist about RSD, which is cool. I mean, it's a huge achievement for the deaf community as well, that our audiologists are referring to RSD. That matters, that means something. I don't have a lot of relationships necessarily with the pediatricians, but I think that there are a lot of different reasons for that. One is there's many of them. There's so many pediatricians in the area. It's hard to find a place or a pediatrician who is open, and taking people. So it's not like, one pediatrician takes all the deaf people, for example, right? It's sort of who's available, what's available. And also, I read something, I don't know, maybe you two might know more, but about the amount of time that pediatricians take when they're in the program, what they learn about deafness is very minute, like the amount of information they get. And they have to know a little bit of everything about everything. And so that means they're not experts in the area. However, one thing I've noticed at Strong is that they provide interpreters for our kids that are 2 years old, which shows the respect and the dignity to that child, that they have access to what's going on, and they don't have to get it secondhand from their parents retelling it later, but that they can see it in real time. Yeah, sure, maybe they don't know all the information and the jargon, but the respect and the dignity is there because they have interpreters. And so I see that as a huge impact on the children positively. They learn how to use and work with interpreters, and also how to understand their body and their mind and that connection. And again, we're very lucky to live in Rochester. We're fortunate to have access to interpreters at the University of Rochester nearly at all times because they have a staff. I work a lot with pediatricians often because when we get a hearing aid, we often need a doctor's letter saying that it's approved. So I'm often calling, especially if there's more if it's a more medical case, medical hearing loss rather. So I'll be in contact with them a little bit more often just to make sure that everything's okay, it's going well, is the hearing loss improving or not, what's needed, do they need a hearing aid, do they need other technology? These are the kinds of questions that we go through. There's a lot of open-ended questions to answer, but maybe not so much immediate knowledge. But there's an opening, They're open-minded to learning, even if they don't have the info right off the bat.
Just had a follow-up question to that, Austin. Do you find that with the technology aspect of it, that people are usually approved for those things, or are people denied it ever for that kind of stuff? Sorry.
That's fine.
Yeah, most of the time it's approved. Sometimes there's maybe a special case where maybe the child has APD or not hearing loss, and so they might try hearing aids, but then it's noticing it's not really working, or they're not really sure that that's the fix. If they're deaf and hard of hearing and have a hearing loss, I would say yes, that most of the time it's approved pretty much without an issue.
You never know.
Can I say one more thing? So I think also not all parents know that early intervention can help support funding for hearing aids and ear molds and DM systems. So that's also something that I like to talk about with families early on. Some families decide that they want to stick with another provider, or they have insurance that covers and they want to go that route. But early intervention does support that and support families in getting the technology if that's something that they choose. And I think that's really helpful, and it makes a great connection between providers and audiologists, because we can say, hey, this is what's going on, this is what we are noticing, do we need to make some tweaks? Is there something else we need to talk to the family about? So I find that to be really helpful, and not all families, I think, know that. So
I did not know that. For my daughter, she's got her first HAT system when she was school-aged, but thank you for public awareness is what we all need about all topics. My follow-up question, the reason I asked about the collaboration with pediatricians is, where do families go? Like, let's say they have a baby, the baby is deaf. Yes, they're connected with audiology, but there's no teacher of the deaf for early intervention. What's happening? Are the parents teaching them ASL while learning themselves? Where do they go? Where do families go from there? What's the first place you tell families to call?
I'm happy to.
I'm not going to market RSD. That feels weird, but you could call RSD. I mean, because we would connect you anywhere you needed to go. But also contacting Monroe County Early Intervention. They will open a case or just kind of like an initial intake info gathering. And then oftentimes we'll provide training for early intervention, so service coordinator as well. So the goal really is if early intervention is contacted, then they should know where to refer the child. They should. Through training, through, again, special position, etc. But RSD really just in general is a lovely resource. If RSD isn't a match for your family, that's totally okay. We always will try to find what is the match for you. So we will reach out, we'll contact, we'll reach into our network, anyone we know. And RSD provides free ASL classes as well for families. We provide sibling classes, so siblings can learn ASL. We provide family groups where you can meet other families of deaf children who are in the program with your child. So I would say contact RSD, not as a marketing ploy, but as we can help get you connected and also early intervention should be one of the first phone calls too. And families often feel overwhelmed with early intervention. So it's a great resource, but sometimes, they're like, they might ask, do you mind sitting with me to fill out this form because I'm not sure what to say and I'm not sure how to fill it out right and I want to make sure I can get the services, and they'll sit down and fill it out with you. So they are a great resource. It can be overwhelming, but people are here to help. Both of my kids were in early intervention, and I only knew what to do because of my experience through being a provider in the education system. So it is overwhelming, and it can be. There's not a perfect answer. There's not a perfect one-size solution, but these are some starters. I'd like to emphasize as well that I know that early intervention itself right now is kind of delayed as well. It's just almost like forever delayed. There's just too many problems, too many cases to try to untangle. So there's a lot going on, but RHSC, similarly, shout out, not marketing, but a shout out to them because they are a great resource. We have what's called early intervention play dates, and it's the first Saturday of the month. So any kids, who are still waiting for services, who have not yet gotten early intervention, maybe they're on the wait list, or, they want early intervention, but they haven't yet gotten approved. They're able to come and have play dates and socialize and engage in activities where they can meet other families, other deaf families. There's some other deaf families there as well, Spanish-speaking families. It's quite a diverse group. And so that's always something that you can look at as well. I also like to provide resources for my kids with hearing loss, aka deaf and hard of hearing kids, but for ASL Bloom, which is an app that you can learn ASL, and then Lingvino. I'm not sure how to, the interpreter's not sure how to pronounce it. Thank you. Lingvano. Vino, wasn't sure. Thank you. And then lifeprint.com as well. So, and that's where you can learn from deaf teachers, because that's the key, is learning from deaf people.
Yeah. Okay, I have a lot. I'm trying to remember all the things that I was going to say. So, once the child is connected with an audiologist, so once they're connected, there should be an automatic referral from audiology to early intervention. Hearing loss is an automatic qualifier for early intervention. So, families and children will have to go through the evaluation process. It's just something that has to be done. But they automatically qualify for services. Like Austin mentioned, the services that are available are limited. Kids end up on, there's a lot of kids on waiting lists, and it really doesn't matter what you're on the waiting list for. You could have hearing loss, you could have Down syndrome, you could have just motor needs, you could have just communication needs, you could have like eating needs. It doesn't really matter. Kids are on a fairly large waiting list. So that's where I think like the breakdown is, right? So we have a family, they say, okay, you're in early intervention, but now you're on this waiting list. We don't know for how long. So one of the families that I'm working with also, RC is also working with too, they ended up on the waiting list, and the service coordinator, God bless her, she's been in EI forever, and she contacted RSD. She also contacted me, and so we were able to support this family until they were able to get services through early intervention. And now we all see this little baby. So it's so exciting, and it's a great team, but there's families on that list who don't have those resources. So I would love, and this is something that we've talked about a lot, is for us to have this like core place in Rochester, or this core group of people, and I don't even know how it works because it's across agencies and pay scales and everything else, but we can provide resources to families, right? It doesn't just have to be one person, but we can provide lots of opportunities for families to connect while they're on that waiting list, even if they do have services. They can get information from everybody, right? And so they can get everything, they can feel like they built this village around them, which is what you guys have done. So trying to build this village for these families is really important. So I think that's one thing. Like, so there's an automatic referral to EI, but how that transpires sometimes is hard. And then there was other things that you mentioned. No, I can't remember what it was. EI, sign classes, groups. Oh, Hands and Voices. That's what I wanted to talk about. So I sit on the Hands and Voices Board of New York. We have a local group in Rochester, and we are doing different, we have been funded through Eddie to do different groups and activities, all free of charge to families. So we are pushing it out to as many people as we know. The other woman with me, Sam Taylor, is actually the head of PTSA at RSD. And so she pushes it out through RSD. I try to push it out through our community, as many community people as I know. We put on social media, so to get families, all communication modalities, technology, no technology, signing, speaking, everybody to connect. And so we've done play dates, we've done the zoo, we've done playgrounds, we've done cookie decorating, we did an Amerks game. We have interpreters at every event. So just another opportunity for families to connect with other families, and for kids to see other kids like them. That's the biggest thing.
So I have a question for Carrie. What about older people? Like, it sounds like you have residents at Rochester School for the Deaf, and like, what type of resources do you have for them? Like, what does student life mean? What is your position? How does that help older students, it sounds like, that you might work with?
This is Carrie. We have an awesome dorm program. The staff are amazing. They're fluent in sign language, competent in deaf culture. The programming is really for anyone age 5 to 12th grade. And so if the school district recommends it or the parents' families want it, And we do provide tutoring as well after school. We provide more academic support in the residential program. And again, through ASL direct instruction, which is really important to have that direct connection and link to language, because at home they might not have that kind of support or linguistic support, so we have that here. The social opportunities are of wealth. There's clubs, there's sports, there's activities. Similar as in a public school, what they offer, we try to offer as many similar opportunities so that they can learn leadership skills, conflict resolution, problem solving, critical thought, introspection, reflection about who we are, safe spaces. We provide a safe space for them to learn and grow as an individual. You know, whatever their identity might be, that's the space that we try to cultivate for them. We also have a lot of trips and travel that we're able to provide for RSD students. Our RSD is wonderful in the support that they're able to give for state competitions, tournaments, facing and challenging other deaf programs in deaf schools, academic bowl, trivia questions that pop up during academic bowl. It's a kind of a trivia thing. Pickleball tournament that we just had, thank you. We just had a deaf pickleball tournament, a deaf youth pickleball tournament, which was so fun. They competed against each other and had a ton of fun. And just, there's so many opportunities for them to grow in their identity and who they are and understand themselves and solidify that. And not to be kind of capped or sheltered, but to provide them with different challenges and exposure to life and the real world to figure things out. Make mistakes, it's okay, keep learning and moving and growing. And because we can share language and communicate that directly to them, they are ready to face the world after graduation. And Deaf Circle as well, Karen was saying, yes, I am also on the board, thank you for the reminder. Deaf Circle. D, I'll expand the acronym. D is deaf, E, events, among families. And so there are different families who come. It can be deaf grandparents, deaf parents, aunts and uncles, siblings. Maybe there's only one deaf child or deaf sibling, but they get together every month for events that we host. And then there's a week-long camp during the summer that takes place as well for both CODAs, K-O-D-A, kids of deaf adults. They're hearing, but their parents are deaf, or SODA, which is siblings of deaf adults. So the deaf individual will have siblings. So one deaf child, but then either they're deaf. Did I mess that up? The deaf kids are not the CODAs and SODAs. Are they? I'm sorry, the three can go.
Yeah.
Deaf kids, CODAs, and SODAs. That's what I was missing. Everyone is welcome. Apologies on the interpreter part. But yes, they all welcome from 5 to 10 to come. The counselors are there. Obviously, there's some hearing individuals, whether it's siblings or parents or whatever it might be. And it's just a really wonderful time to socialize and engage with each other, because those programs don't exist elsewhere where they accept hearing and deaf individuals together. It's usually just for deaf people, so deaf people can have a space. But what about their brothers and sisters who are hearing and want to come? They're often not invited. So this is a really wonderful program, week-long, that allows everyone to come and be a part of it at the day camp. So again, it's called Deaf Circle. It's on Facebook if you're interested. There's monthly events, ice cream gatherings, hikes, sometimes educational workshops or presentations that might take place. We just talked about cybersecurity with what's going on in Tennessee with teens online. Cyberbullying, thank you, and teens online. Yeah, so I hadn't said bullying, so the interpreter is guessing cybersecurity, but cyberbullying specifically with teens, that was what we addressed in the last series. Anything to add?
What about teens who go to school at their home school and RSD?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Yes, there are students who are what are basically would be called like day students. So they would spend part of the day in their school home district and then half day at RSD. So 50-50 or so. We have obviously got full day students at RSD, but we have half and half. So they'd be half at mainstream, half at RSD, and then the rest of the students come to RSD for the full time. But they have courses and different opportunities that they're able to offer in the public school that perhaps RSD isn't able to offer. And so they're able to basically take advantage of both opportunities and get everything that they want from both areas.
I just wanted to follow up with something you'd said before. You seem very passionate about the services that you provide at school. Like, how is you were talking about your history, and like you were going to talk about like your beginnings of, when you were little. So I was just curious how that has developed you into such a passionate advocate as an adult.
Well, I'll give you the too long didn't read version, the short version. But again, being here in Rochester is key. My parents were hearing they had no other deaf individuals in our family ever. I was the first deaf person that they met when I was born. They have no idea why I became deaf. I don't know why I became deaf. My dad teases that when my mom was pregnant with me, she got on the motorcycle with him and it was really loud, so it caused me to lose my hearing. I'm assuming that's a joke. It's not a funny one either. It's not very funny anymore for Karen. I don't know. She's heard it a million times. But anyway, my mom was a very strong advocate. She believed deeply in understanding individuals and what they needed and what we needed, what I needed as a deaf person. And so she was very aggressive in getting information and asking the right questions. And she did share with me that when she'd meet doctors, they would say she has to speak and she has to have a hearing aid. That was the only option that they were offering me. So naturally, my mom did follow it at the time because the doctor's the authority. They went to school. We're going to listen, of course, right? She thought they were the expert. So she did do that and started me on that track. But I was very angry. I was having a lot of outbursts, meltdowns, dysregulated. I was just angry. I didn't understand what was going on. So she met someone at some point, a deaf person in the deaf community who became kind of her and my mentor and taught her ASL, and bought Sesame Street books because they had sign language in them. And so she gave those to me and she started learning and started teaching me. And then my breakdowns lessened, my anger lessened. I had access to language and comprehension and being understood and understanding and Rochester Hearing and Speech. And, so that is an option. And using sign language is an option, and I don't feel forced. I can do what I want. And I did have hearing aids growing up, and I was accepted that, but now I'm a full signer. And again, there was just not enough information at the time that my mom got. She, thank God, was so aggressive and went to RSD. And at that time, it was the Rochester method. It's what it's called. So it was actually only finger spelling. It had kind of like just started to fade, but she didn't like finger spelling only. Similar to closed caption, it's more English based, right? So it's not sign language. So she kind of disagreed with that philosophy and didn't necessarily want me to go down that route. And so the city of Rochester, they had a self-contained classroom for deaf students. Now no more. It's been shut down since. And it was over at school number 1 on Winton, right? Is that right? I can't remember where it is, but yeah.
I don't remember the
I
street.
forget the name of the street.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, near 490, just right over
yeah.
there. But that was the school I went to. I'd lived in Palmyra, so I had to come hike it all the way to Rochester every day, 45 minutes, one trip. K through 6, I did that. And then that was the 80s, so there was a good program. It did actually happen to be a good program. Thank God the teacher signed. It was okay. It wasn't ASL. It was more like C, which is signed exact English. ASL has its own grammar. C is more like English on the hands. So I did that K through 6. It was good. Again, lucky. I had people in my class. There were other students and friends and classmates. There were 5 of us, so we didn't feel alone. We could sign and communicate with each other. But then we'd sometimes go into the hearing classes at the same building for like social studies, math, science, the different core classes, and then come back to the classroom where it was more of like the resource room, if you will, with the teacher of the deaf and the focus there. Gym, art, all of those other classes were with the hearing students. And so unfortunately the program is closed, darn, because it actually was a good one and it worked for me. I thought it was pretty great for the time. I graduated in 6th grade, trying to figure out what I was going to do. And then again, my parents were kind of lost because Palmyra had absolutely nothing, really no experience with deaf or hard of hearing students at all. It was a very small school district, very small school. So we contacted BOCES, Monroe County BOCES, number 1. And that program did indeed have a mainstream program for deaf students. And it was pretty strong at the time. Again, it's dwindled and the numbers have lessened over time. But, they had deaf clubs and again, they could be contacted for support. And they suggested that I go to Pittsford Middle School because there were 2 or 3 other deaf students over at Pittsford. Okay, so there was a teacher of the deaf there, the resources there, but again, Palmyra, I'm going from Palmyra to Pittsford on a quote-unquote special bus that I have to, line up behind all the long buses, and then I'm in the small bus, and I'm coming behind everyone. And at that time, it's easy to feel ostracized or outcasted if you're any little different. And so, like 6th or 7th grade, that one year, I just felt, ooh, I don't love this. And so I went back to Palmyra. My mom fought with the school district, got interpreters, got a teacher of the deaf, got a note taker, everything through the BOCES program, but to be able to have me at Palmyra, so they set that for the very first time in that school district for me. My sister was already there, she was hearing, so that did help a little bit, I think, the transition a little bit easier, and that was 8th through graduation. So I graduated high school there. There was one person, so when there's different ways to sign mainstream, right? You can do it with one finger being like, there's one deaf person among many hearing, or many deaf people among many hearing people. And so I didn't really know the difference at the time. I thought, well, mainstream's fine because I had other deaf people, but not all deaf people do. And so when I graduated and came into the deaf world at NTID, and I was overwhelmed, and I was like, oh my God, I missed out on a lot. Wow. But I've learned not to have regrets. My parents did what they thought was best, and I appreciate that and respect that. My parents encouraged me to have deaf friends over on the weekends and to socialize, to have deaf role models, to go to deaf summer camp, Camp Mark 7. And so I was able to grow my identity and myself as a young individual and learn who I was thanks to my parents' encouragement. If they didn't do that, I would be a completely different person now. But it inspired me to advocate for other deaf youth because that's what my mom did. They have so many opportunities to go so many places, but what is best for them, right? So I'm just grateful my mom tried to do what was best for me and supported me, and that's what I tried to do. She didn't know any better at the time, but she knew what was best for me based on my reaction. So she did consider that and care about that. She would make adjustments based on what I wanted, and really, that works. Any parent can kind of take that lesson on, right? Just kind of follow your child's lead to an extent. And so having access to language and sign language, especially for deaf people, again, is so crucial to be able to develop good dialogue and interaction and communication skills, to be able to understand, quality things and participate in life. So again, very, very short version, the condensed version. But I also used to work at the summer camp program as a counselor, so I've given back a lot. I've been able to see things, not only from my experience, but from others, and try to encourage the right path for people, what it is for them each. Hopefully that answers your question.
Just a quick question. Sorry, just a quick question. Well, 2 quick questions, hopefully. At what age do you feel an individual can make the choice for themselves what form of communication they'd like to use? And I guess kind of having to go with that, who do you feel is the best person to advocate with a public school district? Not even to advocate necessarily, but to do any kind of in-service or communication with the school district to help them better understand a child's needs.
This is Karen. I can speak for some of the students at RSD. They are very young. They are at a very young age. They are able to identify what they want. So for example, I have one, well, this was a while ago now, a long time ago, but I had one that said, I'm ready to talk. I want friends who talk and who can talk with me. And we were like, okay. So we have some students, who want that. You have some students who want to sign all the way and only. And kids have no filter. They're not afraid to tell us what they really think. They're not afraid of other people. So we have to give them credit, I think, a little bit more. Especially when we start to recognize what they want and notice them wanting what they want. families every year are different. Every day is different. People are different every day. So what a family decides today or now might look different tomorrow, 6 months from now, 1 year from now, or more. And so that's why we're here. We're here as a team to talk about it, to figure out our options, to help you think through the process, everything that you need. And also, deaf kids who have auditory access and sign, before the age of 3, they can code switch like you couldn't believe. They're able to go between both languages so easily. Oh, that person's hearing, they're speaking, I'm going to use my voice. Oh, that person's signing, then I'm going to switch to sign. So kids just get it. They're brilliant, really. So give them the opportunity. I mean, really, give them the chance to express what they want and to share. And also, it's our job to listen. And keep in mind that just because kids themselves decide one day to talk, you know, kind of what Karen said, doesn't mean, well, and also receptive and expressive are different too. So what you'll give and what you'll get can be different depending on the day. Maybe they'll talk and they give you sign, or they talk and they want sign. You know, it really can change day to day. If sometimes they want you to talk back to them and share a language, or they want the opposite. So it kind of just depends. They take off their hearing devices, of course, they will most likely want to be using sign and rely on sign, and that's fine. And other days they want to use their devices and maybe speak. So being able to go back and forth is the key, that they have the option to navigate.
Brittany, I think your other question was who can advocate for parents at school districts?
Yeah,
And I think it,
because my children have had the exact same, you know, my children know exactly what they want, and they go to school with interpreters. 3 of my children go to school with interpreters.
But the school district has great difficulty understanding that. And because I have children who use interpreters for receptive language and for, you know, to be able to have access to their instruction, but they're verbal, 2 of the 3 are verbal, the school district doesn't see a need for the interpreters. It's so hard to make that point to the school district. And I truthfully I'm not sure if it's on the school district's part or on the advocate's part, but the advocate has not, the audiologists, the educational audiologists have not been able to make that point to the school district. And again, I'm not sure whether the audiologists aren't making that point strongly enough or whether the district is not receptive to that opinion. Yeah. But it's been kind of an ongoing battle that as a parent I find crazy. I'm having to have this argument year after year.
yeah, I think the battles I think we'll have to do the battles every year, like in the states that we're in right now, just trying to figure out like the funding that we have available for all programs, right? We don't know what that looks like. We don't know what services that continue to look like. So I think continuing to educate is really important. From a school age perspective, I would hope that the team can make a case for that, right? Because they're there, they're seeing how that kid is benefiting, that child is benefiting from the services that are being provided, right? So they should be having, there's some kind of data, there's like, right, if there's like test scores, you know, if, I know that sometimes schools are like, let's take it away and see what happens. Well, like, why are we letting the cat fail and then bringing it back, right? So, I feel like your team should be like a good advocate for you and maybe like bringing that question up as a team. Like, how do we support that and why do we see that as a need? And then I think like reaching out to the community, to other providers, School for the Deaf, advocates, you know, that may have experience working with kids who use interpreters, whether or not they're deaf or hard of hearing, auditory processing, and why that's really important. Depending on each of your children, right, they could be all different depending on why they're using their interpreters. There could be really different needs in terms of auditory processing, hearing loss, right, and the need for visual and verbal communication,
So it is 12 o'clock right now, and so I just wanted to say, did anybody have any final thoughts that they wanted to share? I do want to thank both Aaron Ireland and Ray Green for being interpreters today. We really couldn't have done this without both of you. But if you have any final thoughts, yes, thank you. Any thoughts that you'd like to share?
I was just gonna say, connect with me after.
Yes, yes. These are great people up here on this panel. You know, make sure that you connect with Carrie, Karen, Austin, and Kristen. This has been amazing. We are very lucky to have had you all here. I've learned so much today, and I really appreciate everything that you've shared. I do want to remind people that next month we are having another panel, and this will be on college and college prep for people with developmental disabilities. So please come on the first Wednesday in June at 11 a.m. So thank you all again, and we're glad you're here.
Thank you.